The dawn of civilization. Primitive. Dangerous. Exciting. The handwriting is on the wall. If the human race is ever going to amount to anything, it needs
the most civilized caveman I have ever seen.
Look who's come out of his cave.
You're listening to the Knuckle Draggers extravaganza and, of course, on Cave Dweller Music if you've joined us through the nefarious means of Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you are. We have a guest that we spoke about last week on the show. Jem from Dead is joining us. How's it going? How are you this evening?
Pretty good. I've had a couple of beers, actually, so who knows how this is going to go. Yeah.
A good bit of social lubricant as well. We're going to have a chat about a few things here. Not only you had the launch for the album of last weekend, it was the 14th, the 17th it was.
Yep.
But before we get into that, you did a stint on the road supporting whores, and I saw on your Facebook that you guys have, or you had a snack buffet. Now, my question for you is, what is your go-to road snack? Obviously, you're on the road. You might not be able to hit like a Woolies or something like that, but if you had control over it, what is your go-to road snack?
I have no memory of this snack buffet. I'm going to have to...
I think it was like bananas.
Oh, yes.
And the berries on the dash.
Basically, anything that's shaped like a dick, I'll eat it. But
hot dogs, like ice cream poles.
We are a big fan both of bananas, cucumbers, hummus, although that one doesn't sort of travel so well in the van. Like, as in, you kind of got to eat that in one. I guess anything that's not too, like it's so easy when you're just like driving long distances and going to the petrol station. It's so easy to just fill up on Maxi Bonds or whatever.
Yeah.
So I know that I feel better if I don't eat anything, too carby or oily or whatever, like before I play.
So the Chico rolls, even though it is shaped like a dick, that's not going to be on the menu.
Yeah, you're right. That one's I might have to reassess my assessment. But because a carrot definitely, but I would I wouldn't touch a Dagwood dog. I mean, we're both vegetarians anyway, so
yeah.
I try not to admit that openly too much around metalheads, but we are vegetarians.
How do you find metalheads reacting to you being a vegetarian? Like, I feel as though it, just from my experience at least, and maybe this is like growing up in and around the hardcore scene, but there are more vegans in that genre than there aren't. Is it?
I think it's I'm old enough to be able to say this. I think it's changed a lot. So I reckon when I was younger, the whole metal thing was a lot more, kind of macho-y, I suppose. Which
very much like drink beer, smoke cigarettes, eat steak.
Yeah, which I always found laughable, considering so much of the music is like cosplay, and it's like, just fucking get over it, guys. But yeah, I think you're right. I think now there's probably a lot more people that. I mean, it just kind of depends. Like, yeah, I've neither Jace or I have ever been interested in genres at all. It's more just like, well, we'll do what we do. And I mean, that's the other weird thing. We've just been doing what we do for the last 12 or 13 years. And even in that time, it means we've gone in and out of different genres just depending on what's kind of in. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, it does. Like
the same record will suddenly be, now it's a noise rock record. Now it's a sludge record. Now it's it's like, it's the same fucking record, dude. It's like,
they just put a little veneer over it as to whatever's in vogue. But that's the thing. You guys have been releasing music for, like you said, 12, 13 years now, and the discography is getting up there to someone like Sparks or Willie Nelson. And you can't, it wouldn't make sense to play the same sound all the time. We were talking before we started recording this, but extreme music's something that you've done regardless of, time, mood, how you're feeling. So having it stick in that sort of cookie cutter mold doesn't really make much sense.
No, and I've never had the ability to, honestly. Like, I know Jace he grew up in regional New South Wales in Griffith when he was sort of a late or a teenager, and so he sort of was forced into having to do like cover band stuff.
Yeah, the classic like at a pub or an RSL on an evening.
Yeah, so he's the primary songwriter, and he understands songwriting far better than I ever will. But I never had that experience, so I have never enjoyed trying to do what someone else did on the drums. I've never been good at it. I've never taken pleasure in trying to, recreate something that I've heard before. So it's not, it's funny. Like, I mean, even as a kid, when I first started playing in bands, often people would sort of go, it sort of seems like you're kind of making it a lot harder for yourself by playing the music that you play.
It's like, yeah, that's the point. Why would I do something that someone else has already done?
Yeah, but for me, that would be just as hard. Like for me to sort of get up and try and do like a Foo Fighters song or a Taylor Swift song or whatever would actually be, more challenging and ultimately just really unrewarding. So it's not like when we're writing music, we're trying to go, like as far as we're concerned, we're not really that challenging, particularly compared to a lot of the other stuff that's out there. But we just do what we love, and it just kind of happens to. Don't get me wrong. We're definitely interested in doing something new as well. Like we don't want to, but yeah, we don't sort of dwell on it too much. I can't even remember what the question was now. But
no, that's all right. That's something new. Comment that you made segues me quite nicely into an actual question, not regarding dick-shaped food snacks, is The Laughing Shadow is your brand new record. It's not due out until the 12th of October, if the press that Papa James sent me is to be believed. But you had your launch show on Saturday, the 17th, and you did two shows, if I'm not mistaken. You did an all-ages one in the afternoon and one at night. First and foremost, how did you find the shows? Were the crowd reacting well to the new stuff live?
Yeah. We just did the one. So we're doing an all-ages show soon in Castlemaine, where we live, and that's at a skate shop.
Nice.
But we wanted to. I mean, I've always been interested in the whole idea of like, okay, if you're going to do a launch, that should probably be like actually the first place that people can get the record and that sort of thing. So, and probably partly inspired by the fact that, we've all been pretty isolated and, separated from each other and spend probably too much time, online and not in the real world. We basically decided, or I should say I decided, I sort of run the label side of things. All right, we'll make the record available for about a month, but not through mail order and not online and not. So basically for the time being, you can get it at shows, and we're actually going to stick it in a few like independent record stores as well.
Yeah, so I saw there's one up at Bendigo. I think it's Trash Cold stocking your records up there.
Yes, yeah. So he'll get a few, and again, just the idea is just encourage, like, hey, let's like kind of reconnect. Like, go to that place. It's a good place. Buy the record. Say hello to the person that you're buying it off. Like, it'll be a good experience.
Social interactions in 2022. What are you, mental?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you sort of get them back on? But no, the crowd were really great. When we wrote the record, it's a pretty different one for us, and
which is saying something.
Yeah, and it's certainly the most. I feel pretty confident in saying this. It's the most sort of deliberate and focused record. So I suppose the first couple of albums were just kind of like, what have we got? What do we want to chuck together? Not overthinking it too much. And then I started to really make an effort to, you know, put the songs as we wrote them kind of into, you know, into piles in a way, like, oh, that'll be that album, that'll be on this album, you know. But this one, we really, really deliberately wrote it from start to finish, bar by bar. Like there is not a single piece of the record that wasn't, you know, deliberately put in that place. And we just rehearsed it again and again and again as one continuous, you know, 40-minute slab. And once we finished it and recorded it, I said to Jace, I really like this, but I don't think I can play it too many times because it's just really heavy for us. It was just very much like we were writing it as a way of dealing with, we had quite a few friends die. You know, I lost family to COVID and, we lost people to suicide and just every sort of shitty thing that you could think of. And it was like, this is all we've got. You know, we can't go on tour. We can't do what we normally do. So, yeah, when we played it the other night, before we played it, I even said, hey, thanks everyone for coming down and we probably won't do this again in a hurry. But the crowd were excellent and actually had a lot of them coming up to me afterwards saying, you know, just do what you guys want to do. Like, no, I'm not kidding. I had multiple people say, we never come to see you because we know what we're going to see. Like, just do what you want to do. And that's why we come. And that was awesome because it is a pretty different thing for us to play. The set was basically that album, then just 2 songs. And usually a live set for us would be a lot more, you know, tongue-in-cheek and a lot more taking the piss out of stuff and whatever. Whereas a whole set of just, you know, fairly emotionally heavy for us music. So I couldn't, like, honestly, I've been telling people all week, you know, like it felt like, all these years of sticking to our guns have really, I suppose, paid off in the sense that the people that are coming to see us now trust us to do what we do. Because, you know, we've got multiple versions of the band now. Sometimes we're a 3-piece, sometimes we're a 2-piece, sometimes we do a noise set where I don't play drums. And I'm just pretty amazed that in this day and age when everyone wants, you know, really instant gratification, that people are willing to go, all right, we'll go see this band, and they might play no songs that we've ever heard before. And so the crowd were great. Yeah, I can't really thank them enough for the support, you know. Yeah, and that's, we're used, you know, for most of our career we've been used to the fact that there might be no one in the crowd. So
you had something else alongside the show that was pretty enticing. You had an art show alongside it. Now, I've seen plenty of bands that have projections on the screen behind them. And you know what it's like with heavy bands. It's usually some like really obscure dark cartoon, or they've got old war footage and they've got it projected behind them. But this is probably the first time that I've actually seen a band have a launch and an art show in the same night.
Yeah, so that was, I suppose, so I'm trying to think the best way to answer it. So the artwork for the album, so the way we usually do the artwork for all our records is Jace does Jace does any of the drawings, and then I kind of do the layout and, you know, work out how it's going to work in the formats of, you know, CD or vinyl or whatever. And for this record, Jace made a whole bunch of ceramic sculptures, and that became the basis of the artwork. And often what we're trying to do, you know, I mean, we just, you know, we're just nerds and we just sort of talk a lot to each other about as the album's evolving, you know. Often we end up sort of creating a little bit of a world, you know, like.
It's a very thematic way to approach it. You've got the record itself, but obviously alongside that, you'll go off into this offshoot here, which then leads you into another one. But it is all still tied together by the actual central point, which is the record.
Yeah, and it's sort of just like about, I guess it helps us as we're trying to, as we're working on it together, like it helps give us some direction. It's a bit like how, Tolkien kind of, he didn't just start writing The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. He kind of created, okay, in what world do these people exist? And then he kind of spells it out. And so we do a lot of that. And the great thing is because, sorry, yeah.
Stop you. No, that's right. I couldn't help but laugh, but I literally just started reading The Fellowship of the Ring this afternoon. I went down to Hobart last month, if not the month before. Yeah, it was in end of July. And I read The Hobbit in basically a week. And the co-host for this radio show let's put it this way. When Rings of Power came out, he went on about a 7 or 8 minute diatribe on what he liked and what he didn't. But so he's been pestering me to start reading Lord of the Rings, and I just started it this afternoon. And it's one of those funny serendipitous moments where I've just started reading this book. We hear in this interview, and you go, yeah, it's like what Tolkien does with his world building. I'm like, the stars are aligning here, something crazy.
Well, it's one of those things where, as the reader, like, I mean, I sort of read all those books before the films were a thing, and I didn't, study all of the world building and stuff like it, not to any, detail, but it does help you as the reader. It helps you kind of pick, but it probably more helped him stay on track and made his characters not sort of do weird, unexpected things or whatever, because he's sort of got a backstory and all that. So,
yeah, I guess it kind of like building that world gives you a framework that you can work within. Obviously, it does have a bit of a bonus for the reader as well, sort of they're entering this world that might be foreign to them. But at the same time, it would be pretty handy to know, okay, these are the parameters that I've set for myself. This is what I'm going to work within when I'm working on this.
Yeah. And I think what is really good with us is because there's just the two of us, we can be at all times actually understanding these metaphors and worlds and whatever quite differently to each other, and that's fine. I would probably say I do more of that stuff and just kind of relay it to Jace, and he kind of half the time is probably going, yeah, cool, like, good on you, do your thing.
Yeah, sure, man, that's a great idea.
He's in his world, I'm in mine, but there is a crossover. Yeah. And so, then when we went to release the record, we thought, well, we should kind of exhibit those artworks, but also like the idea was, so for that, and again, I don't know how many people really took it this way, but the way that the venue was laid out, it meant that you walked in and the first thing you saw was that artwork. And then the next room was the room, where we played. And then the next room, they're sort of all in a row, was where you could buy the record. So, not everyone's going to sort of, compute it the same way, but we just, it's sort of giving people a bit more context. And I'm also a big fan of, just like you were saying before, like a lot of bands use projections and all of that, and that's cool, and I'm happy for them to do that. But we really, really like things that are like tangible and that you can, that it physically exist. And I'm not a huge fan, for me, like if we're playing a rock show, I don't need projections. I find them almost a bit distracting from, I'm a big fan of that sort of Fugazi school of thought, like turn the lights up. And
less is more.
Yeah, like watch the human, because that's actually more engaging. Like even, years ago, like when I was in high school, I saw Tool a bunch of times. I mean, hats off to them. Like really, amazing kind of production, and it's great, but it also becomes less spontaneous, I suppose, because they're starting to
I can see what you mean,
synchronize.
because they'd be playing to their light show and to their projection, so you don't really have that spontaneity, that sort of spur of the moment thing. They'd have to go, oh shit, we're running late to hit this particular cue with the projection. We better hurry up.
Yeah, and I've always found the human element just like really, really engaging anyway. In the sense that, like, sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but like, it's in the same way that sometimes you see someone just playing an acoustic guitar and it's really intense, and it's less intense if they start adding loop pedals and this and that, and yeah. So anyway, that's how we did it, and we will do the same format here in Castlemaine, and we also did it in Maryborough, of all places, where no one ever plays, but we played it.
That was something that I was going to ask you about. How did you find playing up in Maryborough? And for people who are listening who are, shall we say, geographically illiterate, I think is a pretty fair way of putting it. Whereabouts in Maryborough, and from where you are, how long of a drive that'd be?
Yeah, so you might, because you're in Brisbane, are you?
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a Maryborough down here. It's about like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes away from us. It's just sort of in.
Okay, so I'm the geographically illiterate. I thought you meant Maryborough in Queensland.
No. But it is a town that's not known for any art whatsoever. But unfortunately, the show we played was the last thing to happen there. There was a woman running a really cool art gallery, for about a year and a half, but it was just impossible for her to like keep paying the rent during COVID, and Victoria got absolutely reamed with it. So I could imagine a lot of those really cool art places, zine shops and those kind of places just went by the wayside. Yeah, totally. But who knows? It's the sort of thing where she might, have sort of just sparked something, because Australians are incredibly apathetic and tend to sort of sit around in their town going, "Oh, nothing happens here," and then you kind of like, you can make it happen.
I know that pain all too well. I grew up in relatively small towns, and then it's just looking back, I was also one of those kids. It's like, dude, nothing's happening here. This sucks. Like, I was really lucky towards the back end of high school. They started doing a fair few hardcore shows around. So at least like once a month, once a fortnight, there'd be bands coming, from Brisbane, Sydney, Adelaide, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Some of those small towns, they kind of look around and go, well, why is there nothing happening? And then,
totally. And Australians are fucking terrified of anything that surprises them. Like, don't get me wrong, I love sort of the history we have of really, really. I just saw a Midnight Oil the other night, and I was like,
"Oh, aren't they fantastic?" I saw them up at the Sunny Coast.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. It was like 2.5 hours in, and they're still just absolutely pounding away. But yeah, we do, as as a culture, we're fucking terrified of anything that's a bit different, a bit challenging, and yeah, as a result, if you're in a small town and you want to try something out, we just have in this country. I don't want to get too negative, but by all means, we have like festival bands. You know what I mean? Like, there's this tiny little band. It's like, you can be a shitty reggae band, you can be an alt country band, you can be. There's a few things you can be, and then you're allowed to play at the festivals. And I always think, isn't the whole point of a festival to actually surprise you? Like, to go, oh shit, I've never seen that before. Like, what is the worst? If you put King Parrot on at a folk festival, what is the worst thing that's going to happen?
That would be hilarious, though.
Some little kid will absolutely lose his shit and go bonkers. and there'll be a couple of dads that go, oh, fucking finally. And
yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm sick of these blokes with dreadlocks and guitars. Yeah. Finally, there's someone out there.
And a few boring people will get up and leave for a while. Like, it's okay. Do you know what I mean?
It's all right. It's fine. They'll come back once the dreadlock guy's back,
Yeah. So, we're going off on a tangent again, but
no, I know exactly what you mean when it comes to those festival bands. I was looking at a couple of festival lineups recently. I think just the classic Triple J ones like Splendor, Falls, and those kind of festivals. I look at it and go, obviously, I think it's fair to say both you and I are not their core demographic, but then they do playlists of the lineup, and you're sitting there thinking, fuck, haven't I heard this song like 3 tracks ago? What's going on here?
Yeah. But anyway, that was just, we wanted to, I suppose do something a little bit different, but still have it be, I guess one of the things with us is, because we do the artwork for our records and we make we print the packaging ourselves and that sort of thing. It's just like, just give people a chance to see the whole picture. And also maybe that for some people, like we've noticed recently, we actually have a few people coming to our shows that are more like visually inclined than they're visual artists. And
yeah, okay.
And I thought, it'd be good to kind of almost be a bit more inclusive to them, to say like, hey, you're buying a ticket to this. And you won't, because maybe for some of those people, like, 3 bands or something is a bit boring and a bit, so you're buying a ticket to this, but there's more to it, so you can check out the art as well. And we've always loved, the fact that art can exist in different spaces. It doesn't have to be in I don't gel that well with the kind of clinicalness of a gallery. I know there's a reason why they're like that.
No, I know exactly what you mean. You walk in and you think, am I here to see art or am I here to get a fucking operation? Because the pristine nature of it, it looks more or less like a hospital,
Yeah, and you sort of, you don't even want to speak too loudly. And that's, for you and I, coming from like the music world, that's pretty weird.
That's exactly what you need.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're used to, it's normal for us to be halfway through a song and people to be yelling obscenities at you or something, and it's like, that's all right. But the show went really, really well, and we'll do the same sort of format here, with the only difference being we're trying really hard to get some of the local kids in, because, there's not a lot for them to be able to do. And they're generally, excluded from gigs because of the whole sort of licensing thing. Yeah. So we shall see. We're old, so they might just go, fuck, we don't want to see these dinosaurs play, this music. But, we'll see how it goes.
With the visual art stuff, is that something that you would be keen to have as a more permanent fixture of the shows? I know earlier you said doing the same thing repetitively can and does great on you, but it seems like there would be a bit of a crossover between visual artists and musicians. Would that be something that you'd be keen to continue in the future or do different variations of?
We're definitely into it, but we're also, have, as a matter of necessity, have always had to be very, like, we're essentially a band that if you give us a PowerPoint and either permission to be loud or enough time before the cops arrive, we can do what we do. Yeah. So, even adding the 3rd member recently has been like, oh God, now when I want to book a show with the 3 of us, that is so much more, I forgot, how much harder that is to coordinate.
Trying to get more than yourself in one place at a time is a nightmare. I never understand how, massive orchestras manage to do it, because they've got 20 plus members, and you need to make sure that everyone's free. Like,
well, they're getting paid, so that's their job. That's the difference.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point.
It's kind of the equivalent of saying, how does McDonald's get all these people to turn up every day? Well, that's their job. So
yeah, okay, fair call. But yeah,
look, we would do it, but I also like, sometimes there's a bit of a tendency in this band. I'll have a bit of an idea, and Jace just goes, "Yeah, cool, no worries," like goes along with it. But then I realise, that's more work for him.
Yeah.
So the good stuff with this is because they're sculptures, they're actually pretty straightforward. Like Jace has an idea of how he wants to present them, and as long as he has a flat space, then he can do that. So it's not like hanging artwork on the walls. And we might look at we've got some friends that work with other materials where, like where you can make sort of figurines and masks and stuff. So that sort of rubbery, you can make molds, and so that could be something we do down the line. But I mean, it's also, for me, it's a matter of like, I do all the booking, I run the label, and I really, really want to just like playing the music is the priority.
It's just all the admin stuff associated with it. It's kind of a necessary evil.
Yeah. So we're definitely into doing it, but it wouldn't be like when we go on tour, we've got to bring all of this art with us as well. Like it's always been a bit of a challenge, because the majority of venues we play are really ill-equipped as far as even how to sell your merch. And the merch itself, we would consider that part of our like art output, like we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't tend to, even our T-shirts, we don't tend to make T-shirts that are, and nothing against this, like a lot of classic metal shirts are really like an advertisement for the band. Like they just have the band name as big as possible, and that doesn't, like half of our shirts don't even have our band name on them. They're just kind of something cool that we, thought looked good.
Yeah.
But presenting it is actually a real like challenge given the venues we play. So yeah, it's a really long answer, but it's just a matter of being realistic. So we wouldn't, if we're playing, on a 4-band bill or something. That's the other thing that's sort of what we're doing is if it's our show, then
you'll be able to do it. But if you're, at like a mini festival or something like that, or if you're supporting another band, you can't really be like, oh, hey guys, can we have all of our statues around, please?
Yeah, exactly. And so because we've also been doing, we have a whole lot of like, I guess, set dressing, like, and again, they're ones that we can move around quite easily. They're actually just all Jace's hand drawn them just on cardboard.
That's DIY as fuck. I love that.
And it's we really like doing it. And for these shows, we're doing it that way. But again, it's only if it's our gig and we're the headliner. I'm using air quotes, but then we'll do it that way. And we're sort of trying to create the sort of the environment as much as we can that we would want. But then when we're playing other shows, like when someone said, "Hey, it's my birthday, can you come and play?" We're like, cool, yep, we'll just come and slot in, wherever you need us.
You mentioned the hand-drawn cardboard stuff and wanting things to be sort of like another art output. From what I can gather and from what I've been told by James, you guys are also hand doing your own vinyl to a certain degree. Could you talk me a little bit through that?
Yeah, so I used to print like our sleeves, like all of them, by hand. So I'm a amateur really screen printer. Like I wouldn't consider myself a particularly good one, and in some ways, in recent years, I've gotten worse. But that's because I've just gone, you know what? I'm just going to have fun when I do it. Like somewhere along the line, what was it? It was when I started playing footy for, like, we do like a fundraising footy game in this.
Oh, RecLink. Yeah.
it's like that. It's based on that, yeah. And I love footy. Like I grew up just loving it, but I'm tiny, so it was never going to be something that I could really do, seriously.
And just as a side note, to clarify for the Brisbane-based and international listeners,
yes,
you do mean AFL, yeah.
I mean Aussie rules, yeah. And anyway, when we started doing like training and stuff for the game, this was a few years ago when we started doing it, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, it's actually quite nice to just do something you're kind of shit at, like because I've been so obsessed with music.
It's really freeing, isn't it?
It is,
kind of understanding that you're shit at something, but just doing
fun.
it. Yeah, just doing it for the fuck of it. Like you just get so much joy going, this isn't the greatest thing that I've ever done, but I really enjoy doing it. I'm the same with cricket. Rubbish cricketer, but there's just like you sort of get caught up in like the team atmosphere and then the camaraderie of it. And then, I know exactly what you mean. It's fun to do something that you're shit at.
Yeah. And I think that's probably really healthy as well. And so anyway, with the printing, I don't get too bogged down in being perfect anymore. I just, have fun when I'm printing stuff. But I used to print every single one of our record sleeves one by one. And then basically I realized this is insane because it's so time consuming, and I can't really charge like anything remotely what's realistic for how much time I've put into them.
Because it's like charging yourself.
Yeah, or just like not everyone. That's the other thing. Some people want a handmade record. Some people just want a record and they don't care too much. So now I do a bit of both. So I usually do, like for this record, I'm doing 50 that are made by hand myself, and the other 250 of this pressing are, just the factory will print the sleeves. And then that way it's like you can choose which one you want. Like the handmade one costs more. The handmade ones always sell out.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be busting a gut trying to sell 100 of them or 200 of them. I just want to go, yep, I know if I make 50, I can sell them.
They're going to go.
Yeah, and if there's a few left over, well, I can give them to people that I want to give them something special. Like it's all really manageable and it's not dragging me down. And we're not, like the Melvins or some fucking band where they're, limited pressing sell out in literally minutes. We put it out and you've usually got at least minimum, you've got a few weeks to decide if you want to buy it or not. And if you miss it, well, get over it because we'll do another record in 6 months. So it's fine, But yeah, look, that's been like, I might have even said this last time I was on Cave Dweller, but, I started making records when I was a kid, like when I was like 14, and I did not until maybe I was 20. I had not ever heard of the term DIY. And frankly,
I do remember hearing that you did it off your own bat, and then you heard DIY, and you're like, "Huh."
Yeah, I found that
that's
really
what I'm doing.
peculiar. I found that really peculiar because, as far as I could tell, and
how else were you going to do it?
Exactly, and I still honestly, I think, look, half of the people, look, it's fine. Like, be proud of what you do, absolutely. But this whole idea, like, let's not kid ourselves that you've made this, decision to be DIY. Like, none of us have, record labels beating down the door saying, hey, I want to release your shit, and we're going, no, like,
no, we want to do it ourselves.
Yeah. we're doing it ourselves because that's actually the only way it would happen. But it's also a mixture of things because it's that, and also when you really care about something a lot, as most people do about their own music, like you care about it to a degree that no one else could or should.
Yeah.
So it just then sort of stands to reason that it's kind of the old cliche, like if you want something done properly, do it yourself. Like, because the more that you hand over to someone else, it's not a bad thing to do that. It's not, but it just means you've got to give up that part of it. You've got to go, even if you say, hey, I want a matte finish on the paper, half the time they'll just turn around and do it in glossy because they don't like you're no one like you're not an important client, so then you get it back and okay I've got to work with this. So at least the more I do myself, at least if there's a mistake, it's only me that is to blame.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. We've spoken about we've spoken around the record. I think it's fair to say the brand new one that's coming out on the 12th of October. How did obviously you guys, I wouldn't say genre jump. There we go, got it. I wouldn't say that is exactly what you do, but every Dead record has a different flavor to it. What kind of flavor were you thinking about when you were in the process of The Laughing Shadow? You mentioned that it was like a pretty heavy record, a pretty deliberately written record. But how did you guys find doing this one to your long back catalogue of other stuff?
Well, it was very much more deliberate than any of the others, and I'm just trying to cast my mind back to exactly how it would have started. But we had at the time when the pandemic hit, we had an album, Raving Drooling, that we were just about to release. So we released it anyway because we just weren't going to,
you weren't going to
sit around waiting. No.
Yeah, sit on it indefinitely. And it ended up being a pretty strict thing for a year and a half, 2 years for you guys down there.
Totally. I mean, we've not managed to tour that record or have a launch or anything for it at all. And we've pretty much sold out of the second or third pressing. So it's kind of like, all right, well, it's done what it needed to do.
Yeah, exactly. On to the next one.
But we also had at that time another album that was about, almost all recorded, like as in we had 7 of 9 songs or something that were finished. So the plan was to just finish that record. But then, COVID happened and it sort of, oh shit, what do we do? Because we couldn't get in to record, and we were going to finish recording in the States. We couldn't do that. So we had to kind of reassess a lot of things. And then we just kind of went, all right, you know what? Because once we cancelled like a lot of gigs, cancelled a US and an Australian tour, we went, we're not going to bother. We're not going to do that thing that a lot of people did, which is like rebook, and cancel and all of that.
Oh, dude. The amount of shows that I had tickets to and then got rebooked was such a nightmare. And I thought I was real clever. I was living in Innisfail, which is like North Queensland before everything shit the bed. And I was like, it's going to be great. I'm going to move down to Toowoomba. Brisbane's really close by. I'm going to see all these gigs. Got down there the first day I started work, COVID hit, everything shit the bed. And then after about, I think it was like a year, gigs started to come back. And then once gigs started coming back, I feel like every musician in Australia has had to cancel a gig because of COVID at this point. You just see it on the social media, be like, hey, sorry guys, we can't do it. Which I can imagine to be a nightmare for them. But you guys basically just went, by the sounds of it, fuck it, we'll do a brand new record.
Well, we just weren't interested in, we were gutted. We were absolutely gutted to not be able to play, but we weren't interested in sort of bashing our head against the wall, and it sort of seemed like, all right, what can we do now? Like, how can we actually make a positive, I suppose, out of this? Like, how can we make use of this? Because the thing that we love doing and the thing that we've practiced our whole lives, we can't do anymore. So then we just thought, all right, let's just really focus on writing more music, because it sounds extreme now, but you got to remember, like, no one knew like when we would be able to play again, and there was no fucking in all of that government support, we were just ignored the whole time.
Oh, it was ridiculous. Like, a really good mate of mine is a drummer down in Melbourne, and he played in a kids band, and he had like yeah, all of those gigs were just shot to shit. He had to move to doing online drum lessons, and he's going, there's no support for me. Like I'm out here trying to like fend everything off my own back. And it sounds like a pretty consistent story from a lot of the musicians that I've spoken to is, you know, Harvey Norman got fucking how much in JobKeeper, and then the musicians got not like
we got nothing. We got nothing, and we're
somewhere between
ignored.
fuck all and nothing.
We got nothing, and it was fucking humiliating because there were like grants that you could apply for where it was like, you know, they're gonna give them to literally 1% of the people that are eligible. Like it was just like a lottery at that point. So yeah, we thought, look, how do we use this time kind of positively? And one thing really for us was, well, we've never actually taken a break, literally never taken a break in 10 years from touring.
And it's a full stop for you.
Yeah, and it's the only way that it was going to happen because we're just not that way inclined. And we also, you know, it was like, all right, how do we use this positively? And basically the kind of long format is that's how I grew up playing. Like I grew up playing a lot of, you know, 20-minute songs, 40-minute songs, you know, hour-long sets that were only one song. That was really normal for me. I grew up like really into bands like Pink Floyd and Hendrix and King Crimson and stuff. And so the bands I was in were taking that stuff sort of to the logical, you know, next conclusion. So yeah, and we actually had the opening song, so the song that's like already out on Bandcamp, we had that written before we even formed Dead, and we like recorded it in our old band, but I was never quite happy with it, so it didn't come out, and I feel kind of vindicated now because
finally
sort of had an idea to go, let's just use that as a bit of a like, let's write something around that. And Jace had actually already written like sort of the companion to that, I suppose, which is the first song of side B. And then again, like I was saying before, that whole thing where we're often thinking kind of different things to each other, but it's okay because we're just working on it. We basically we just wanted to write something that was simultaneously one long thing.
Yeah.
But also made up of, you know, smaller movements, and we had no interest in doing the doom thing of like sitting on two chords for 20 minutes. And it's totally fine. I love that shit, but that's
the reason I was laughing, because I know exactly what you mean. I love doom, think it's fantastic. When it gets into like funeral doom and they're playing the same 2 or 3 chords for, you know, 10 minutes straight, it's the best music to zone out to. But if you're wanting to listen to it, to like get into it musically, it's not quite there, is it?
Totally. And look, again, I'm old enough to go, fuck, I've lived through that many waves of it. Like the first...
You've seen it before.
The first time Sun came to Melbourne, no one was there. Like I was standing there in the Hi-Fi bar, which holds like over 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And there was like 100 of us, or maybe 150. It was an empty room, right? And not long after, or maybe around the same time, we did some shows at Electric Wizard.
Dude, nice.
They did well in Melbourne, but they didn't do well anywhere else. And it was still very much like, you know, outsider stuff.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, suddenly all that shit was cool. And, you know, Sun were already like they were admitting very much that, you know, they were sort of a rehash of Earth.
Which are another fantastic band. I love Earth.
Totally. And so it's just like, how many fucking generations now have we gone through of, so for me, it's like, what's that, you know, Emperor's New Clothes or whatever. It's like,
yeah.
You know, don't get me wrong. I loved watching Electric Wizard, you know, night after night. I do really like them. I love Sun. I love a lot of that stuff, but I don't need to, you know, personally, I feel like a fraud just doing that sort of thing. So anyway, Jace was definitely more probably influenced by like Morricone kind of stuff, with what he was writing for the record.
Yeah.
And I was very, very much influenced by the final Harvey Milk album, which I think is I just think that's a masterpiece. And something that always stands out to me about that record is how the drummer is playing the kit more like he's, more like each part of the drum kit is an individual drummer in an orchestra. So he's not, he doesn't play fills over the entire album. He just doesn't do it. But he doesn't sound boring, and every hit is deliberate and calculated. So that was the sort of approach I took, and we really did think about every single bar and every single hit. So there's no jamming, that only in the very, very final few minutes is there some improvising in the playing. And, so in that way, again, you just got to let it turn into what it turns into, but we were pretty deliberate. And somewhere along the way, we just kind of realized it's just going to sound stupid if we sing over this. Like, it's, again, this sounds a bit wanky, but I just sometimes think words, they really get in the way if you, like, words are great when you're trying to take the piss out of someone, or you're trying to say something really specific, or you're trying to, Jace is good at writing words that aren't too, like that they can be quite, they're more paint a mood than a specific idea. But it just sort of seemed like they're just going to get in the way. So it kind of became like that was another point of difference in the album for us. That all right, we're focusing on songwriting in a slightly different way, because there will be no hooks, there'll be no choruses, there'll be no it became very, very cathartic for us, and it's just a very different sort of thing to play, I suppose, because when we play it, it's you're really committing to this kind of 40 minutes of one idea,
Yeah. You mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the interview, but Dead has now become a 3-piece. Is that with the saxophone player?
No, funnily enough, we kept like hoping that we could convince her to join. But no, so we've got another bass player who is
nice.
The bass player from my high school band, Firewitch, which was drums and 2 basses.
Yeah.
And he actually played a bit of noise on like the second album, and we'd always said to him, hey, you should join the band sometime. And he'd always said, yeah, I'd love to. But he's never really lived anywhere near us. He's traveled a lot. And then sometime, I suppose last year, he moved to Ballarat, which is like about an hour from us. And we just said, we'll just join the band. And basically we've said, you're in the band, just tell us what you can and can't do. We won't stop and wait for you. So we'll play shows without you when we need to, and we'll keep running the band as we need to. Like you don't really, I sort of learned enough through when I was in a band with him when we were kids, where he didn't really want to do any of the, boring stuff. He just wanted to kind of rock out.
Just play live music.
Yeah, and that, was ultimately partly why we broke up, because I really fucking resented it, because I was like, dude, I'm doing all this work and you don't even know, because you've never done it before. Like you've never booked.
Yeah.
So now it's a really good arrangement, because it's like, well, you don't have to do any of that stuff. We'll, continue to make albums without him and also with him. And, we'll tour. It's also just changed. It's just made us be able to do more diverse stuff, so that as a general rule, the songs we play in the 3-piece mode there's very little crossover. So we play different sets when we're a 2-piece. You don't have to, but just most of the songs that he plays on have become, it just sounds better with him now. Why would we do it without him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just different material, just material that it's got to have a bit more breathing room to allow for him to, fit in. But he's been great. He's been so good, because one of the problems we've had when we've tried to encourage people to, collaborate with us is they usually end up saying to us, man, you guys just have your own language. I don't actually know what the fuck's going on. And Tommy, just from the word go, and it's just how he is, he's just like, I'm in the fucking band. I'm in this band. Like he's not hesitated at all. Probably took him about, half a song the first time we played as a 3-piece to kind of like settle in.
Yeah.
And I just love it.
Well, hopefully it wasn't one of the 40-minute songs.
I just think it's so cheeky. I'm like, fuck, look at you go. Like, just...
It's like, we've been doing this shit for ages. You've been here for half a song and you already get it.
Yeah. And that's what we really needed, just someone to like absolutely go for it and not... It's kind of a hard thing to explain, but the way that we play, we're not waiting. We're not... If you make a mistake or whatever, we're not waiting for you. So we need someone that just can kind of carry themselves and deal with that,
Yeah, definitely.
And he's very much that player. Yeah.
I did want to double back to the saxophone. Is it all throughout The Laughing Shadow?
Yeah, so Jenny is Jace's girlfriend, and that meant that, he was able to, when we were in lockdowns, keep sort of showing her bits and go, this is what I'd like you to play. So he might play, a melody on a guitar or something and be like, this is what I'm envisioning you playing over the top. So I'm just making sure I get this right. Yeah, so Jenny practiced all of that with him and then came in and played all her parts as overdubs. So
nice.
I don't think we were actually ever, the two of us laid down all the beds to all the songs live, but I don't think the three of us were ever in the room together. We were in the room together, but we weren't performing together. And, yeah, she was sort of taking the role of, like, we sort of said to her, you've got to be like the horn section, basically, because we can't get anyone else.
I was about to say, much like the drummer on that final Harvey Milk album played the drums like each separate part in an orchestra. You're like, all right, Jenny, you're here. You're basically a one-person horn section.
Yeah, so we got her to layer stuff a fair bit. But again, it's all very like, if you listen to the album, there's not a lot of like embellishments and stuff going on there. Every piece in that record until you get sort of somewhere towards the end is really, really deliberate. So it was kind of like, all right, this is the melody, and just play it like how an orchestra would. Don't play it and then do little widdlies at the end or whatever. You actually just everyone's sort of doing their bit for the greater good, if you will, of creating this kind of mood.
And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is I don't know what it is about having saxophone or brass over, quote unquote heavy music, but I think from how well it can create a mood to how just utterly abrasive it can get, it's one of those instruments that complements it incredibly well.
Yeah, I mean, we, like Jenny, her background is playing in punk bands, so we felt good about, her being able to fit in.
Yeah.
I don't think we wouldn't have done it just with
a classically trained one, or like someone who's only grown up in that, like, the real conservatorium type.
Well, we just wouldn't have done it with someone we didn't know. Like, we actually had, and I feel terrible because I've forgotten their name because I can't pronounce it very easily, but we played with an Italian band when we were on tour in Europe.
Oh, dude, nice.
And they're kind of like a grindcore band, but with drums. Okay. I think drums, tuba, and maybe trumpet, or maybe two tubas. Yeah, it's crazy.
That sounds awesome.
Well, look, they're really, really good. They are like they're stupidly, like, you know, physically good. Like, to see what they can actually do on a tuba is insane.
Yeah.
So I actually did contact them early in the making of this record to say, hey, you know, we're working on something where we're going to want a horn section. Would you want to do it? And they said yes. But then as we kind of progressed on writing it, and we realized how sort of in-house it was all going to be, like, we recorded it literally down the street from where I live. And, you know, we recorded it with Mike, who recorded Raving Drooling as well. And it just kind of suddenly became, I think because the material was so personal, it became like, I actually don't want anyone involved in this that we don't know well.
It would have felt a little bit weird having someone from the outside coming in and performing on something that is so personal and so, you know, close to your heart.
Yeah, and I would have felt bad if I would have had to have said, oh, actually, we're not going to use that, or and probably the how isolated we all were. Like, it just sort of felt more like, nah, this is our world right now. It's just these people. Yeah,
exactly.
You know, it's just the people within 5 kilometers. So, yeah.
I was about to say, man, 5 kilometers, lucky you had the studio down the street from you.
Totally, yeah. It was a lot of rehearsing at opposite ends of the room with masks on. That was the other reason, actually. We wanted to have something that we knew we could perform, and we thought, you know, we'll probably be back to performing live, but in masks. So let's. And we were very foolish to think that, of course, because the whole live sector just got completely just, you know, like, dude, ignored.
That's genius, lad. Should we have words on this record? Nah, man, we're going to have to perform in masks. That's just going to be a nightmare.
I honestly thought look, this is what's so upsetting about this whole thing. We could have had gigs during all that time.
Yeah.
If this industry wasn't based purely around consuming alcohol. Like,
that's a good point.
We could have had a situation where people sat down in masks, distance from each other, and bands played, and it actually would have been a really COVID safe thing to do. But that's not the way our industry is set up. So we just did that other thing where we went, all right, we're closed. Oh, now we're open, and everyone can just fucking cut loose. Oh shit, now we're all sick again. Sorry, we're closed. You know, it was just a nightmare. But we did genuinely think it's like
the roller coaster of that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, and we just thought this is like, we can't be playing a show where we're yelling into microphones because you're literally spitting out into the room. So yeah, it's hard to remember what informed what, but yeah, we definitely, it just wasn't a time for celebration.
No,
so it was more somber, and I'm really glad that we were able to get it done, because like the recording dates got pushed back a number of times because of lockdowns.
Yeah.
And I was almost hitting a point where I was like, I actually don't want to hang on to this music anymore. Like the mixing process was quite took a lot out of me. Like, I would go to Mike's house. He lives about 2.5 hours away, so I would drive over, and we'd spend a day mixing, and then I'd drive back home, or I'd stay the night at a friend's and then finish the next day. And it was kind of that thing where I was like, I really want to do it justice, but I really actually want this to be over. I don't want to keep listening to this. It's just actually a bit too much for me. So yeah, I'm glad that we were able to do it, and now we can now it's up to us. If we want to keep playing it, we will. If we don't, we don't have to. You know, we've got other things. We've got other records already that we want to release as well. So
I was going to ask, and to wrap up the interview, I was going to ask what's the plan for the rest of the year, but it seems like you guys, in true Dead fashion, already have a shitload of albums lined up.
Yeah, well, the plan for the rest of the year is actually just to, like, I guess, get the shows done that are booked, we would really like to get some way up the East Coast before the year ends. But I actually just started trying to do that this week, and it looks like all the places that we would generally play are booked out. So that'll probably have to happen early next year. Yeah, and it's probably just we got to make a decision really between how much do we play live and how much do we record, because we've got new material that we've written as the 3-piece. So that's like the next recording project, is to record as a trio. And yeah, we do have another 2 records actually.
Nice.
Sitting on the shelf. And
never stops, does it, for you?
No, and I've kind of got to work out how do we be realistic about, like, yeah, all that boring stuff that happened during COVID. Like, we would normally press vinyl overseas, and that's now really, really backed up. And
yeah, I remember I was having a chat to the guys from Malignant Aura last month, if not the month before. And the other painful thing is as well, they were saying that the vinyl plant that they went through, because they weren't, a big name, someone that's going to sell immediately out of all this records, they just kept getting pushed back because all these other, these big swinging dicks would come in and be like, oh, we've got this record coming out. So the planner get in contact with them and be like, hey, sorry, we've got to push it back because we've got this, I don't know, I think they said like a soundtrack or something was coming in, and they knew that was going to go. So are you now pressing all the vinyls in Australia?
Well, this one we pressed, at Program Records in Thornbury, and they're really great. We've always, it's always bummed us out that we haven't tended to press here, but it's just been an economic thing that it's made more sense to press in the Northern Hemisphere and leave, about half the pressing there.
For all the distros overseas, yeah.
Yeah, and then whereas it's prohibitively expensive to do it the other way around because it costs more to press here. So that's the only reason. And we, it's a tough one because every time I release a record, like a vinyl record, I think, oh, this might be the last, just for the fact that it's an expensive thing to do. It's inherently got risks of, at our level where we're usually pressing, 500 or less. If they make a mistake, tend not to want to fix it, that sort of thing. And our focus has always been on the music, not the format.
Yeah.
But we also really want. It's a weird sort of like little paradox, I suppose, in a way, in the sense that you just make the music, because you sort of have to. You can't help it. And then, you don't want to put too much energy into then trying to sell it. But it is good to share it. And we're probably at a point now where we can go, well, we've been doing it for this long and we keep selling records. So there are people out there that want to buy them. It's just a matter of making sure you can find them each time you release something, because there's so much noise, isn't there? I can't keep up with my friends, the music they're releasing. I buy most of my, in fact, almost all the music I buy I buy the download on Bandcamp.
Yeah, and then you have to navigating through Bandcamp and all the new releases there.
Totally, I can't, even the ones that I've paid for. I sometimes go, shit, fuck, I've had that for months and I still haven't properly listened to it.
Oh, dude, I know that pain all too well. Yeah,
so it's about and because we have that problem where we it's not a problem, but it's a challenge, I should say. Because we do release music quite frequently, we can't do what another band might do, which is this will be the album we have for sale for the next 3 years. So
yeah,
for us, it's usually half a year or a year or something. So yeah, we'll just keep doing what we do, but I am always, I'm always thinking about all right, how can we maybe do it differently? How can we maybe get some of those songs out of our system without going through the full process? But we do really love like recording with a proper sound engineer and getting things to sound good. Like that means a lot to me. I'm not a big fan of the, sounds like someone recorded it, in your shed on a laptop mic sort of thing. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, and especially with how dense a lot of the music that you guys make is, you do need that high quality sound production. You need it to be mixed well so you can hear all the elements. Otherwise, it does get muddy. It gets really confused as to what's happening.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of sonic information, I suppose. So yeah, but yeah, your question was, what are we doing? It's strange for us because, yeah, I would like to just be back on tour, but it's almost like starting again with some of it. Like half the venues that we would play, they don't exist anymore, and
so having to find new venues, and then
having to find new venues, and probably like a lot of people kind of reassessing, like, hey, what are we willing to put up with, and what are we, like, I sort of touched on it before, but we're not actually big fans of the whole, like, absolutely, like, how integrated live music is with just making money for beer companies.
Yeah.
It's not why we do it. Like, we got into music because we love music, not because we love drinking. We know a lot of people in our lives that, that can be a real barrier. And particularly, like, I was 14 when I started playing gigs in pubs. So for the first 4 years of my music career, none of my mates were allowed to even watch me play.
Yeah.
It's
that barrier. And I think it goes a long way with you guys doing the all ages shows. Because I know that when I was younger, seeing bands touring and you get really excited, you get really keen, you see the announcement, you go to buy the ticket, and then the fucking dreaded 18 plus text comes up somewhere and you just go, oh, shit.
Yeah, so yeah, we're also in a kind of time of reassessing a bit of that stuff and going, man, some of those venues that we played for 10 years straight where they treated you like shit. And, music is not at all the priority, and it's
how many beers
a lot
they
of
can
people.
sell, yeah.
Yeah, and it's excluding a lot of people. So we're in a process of kind of trying to go, fuck, can we do a little better? Can we still go to those towns, but maybe, yeah. And it doesn't matter where you play. It's, going to be sort of harder for someone. And, sometimes a really great DIY space has really terrible accessibility if you're in a wheelchair or, so you can never get it perfect. But
it's trying to find the balance though, isn't it?
Yeah, we're definitely interested in, prioritizing, if we can, playing venues where the venues in which the priority is the music, not just selling booze. And because that's just our audience as well. We're not, we've played shows where we've had, 100 people in the room and the bar said, that was terrible. That was worse than a Monday. Like, sorry, everyone was just watching the music, I guess.
Yeah, how fucking dare they go to a gig and only just watch the music? What kind of shit is this?
But it's a problem. It's a real problem. Like, I get it from the venue's perspective. They're going, well, that's literally the only way we make money. But there's got to be something we can do, because that's not how. Like, if you go to see the latest Marvel film at the cinema, it's not full of people just getting on the piss, is it? Like, but there's
I suppose if you go one of
those
flash cinemas where you can buy a beer, there might be a couple, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, there's not like a mosh pit at, of people, getting drunk at, like, the like theatre production, down the road. Like, so there's something about our industry that's I think, anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but a lot of people have been having that same sort of like, all right, are we actually happy with everything that was going on? Because some of it's pretty shit, like we had it recently, we went up to Sydney for the first time since the pandemic, and it's like, oh man, we've come all this way, we're lending gear to the other band, and then we get there, and then the sound engineer doesn't want to let us set up, because we sort of set up facing each other. And I sort of think, we traveled 900 kilometers to get here, and now you're freaking out about me moving 2.5 feet from where you would like me. And we're not doing it to be difficult. We're doing it because that's the show that we do,
Yeah.
I just find that really frustrating. Whereas when we've toured in Europe, it's the other way around usually, where they go, all right, what do you do? What do you need to make, to facilitate us, helping you do what you need to do. So yeah, that's going to be where I'm kind of prioritizing for the next little while. Like, yeah, how do we play places where we can prioritize the music? But, I might eat those words, and next time I speak to you, we might just be playing at some shitty pub.
Oh, it goes back to you being a 14-year-old playing gigs in pub. Nothing like nostalgia, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening, mate. If people did want to check out your music, any upcoming gigs, where would they go? How can they get in contact with you? How can they find your music?
Yeah, probably actually the best place is if you just go to the Bandcamp, which is deadsounds.bandcamp. I make sure that like the gigs are maintained on that. So it's better than sort of wafting through the social media, noise. And that's where we put literally every release that we ever do. It's all up there. So yeah,
beautiful. And obviously, it is the day and age where Facebook's a touchstone for a lot of people. So I'm guessing there would be a way to keep up to date with everything there as well.
Yeah, you can. I just find I don't know who's on it and who's not and stuff these days. So,
no, dude, I know exactly what you mean. If I didn't do stuff with radio and if I didn't have mates overseas, I just wouldn't use social media at all,
Yeah, and increasingly I know that people that come to our shows aren't on it anymore. So, I figure like the Bandcamp is like, yep, I can promise you that I put our shows on there all the time, so you won't miss it.